Thank you very much for this month session of AI for Good in New York. So today I have the pleasure of having François Candelon. So he's a world thought leader in technology and AI. He's currently a partner at the private equity firm 7-2. It's the oldest private equity firm in France. He's a former managing director and senior partner at BCG, at the Boston Consulting Group, and the global director of the prestigious BCG Henderson Institute. So over there, he has led a lot of interesting research on AI and the future of work. He's focusing on the digital revolutions, its economic and geopolitical impact. And he's also an expert in China, and China's digital landscape. He has worked in Europe, I think in China, work on technology, media, and telecom. And you can find him on LinkedIn. And he has done many presentations and written many articles. I think you contribute to Fortune and other websites. So what are the formats of the François will share with us some of his work that he has done recently, and so this is very interesting, and then we'll have a conversation about it. Okay, so take it away. Thank you, François.
Thank you, Min. Thanks a lot. No, yes. First of all, I'm here, and I will be very happy to get your questions and so on, because I think there is one thing that everyone is aware of, is that we don't know, and very often we don't know what we don't know. And what I've been trying to do to try to know a bit more is really to work with evidence-based facts. And as we were facing a lot of, let's say, we had a lot of benchmarks on the technologies and so on, I believe it would be important to do experiments on the way humans are using GenAI. And when we started at that time, these experiments, I was still at BCG. I just left a month and a half ago. We did actually 2 experiments, and we wanted them to be really to have 3 characteristics. The first one, we wanted them to be really scientific. This is why we set up a team with Karim Lakhani from Harvard Business School, with Ethan Mollick from Wharton, and some others. On one hand, we wanted it to be scientific. We wanted it to be large scale. So one of the experiments, we worked with more than 700 BCGers. On the second one, more than 500. And we wanted it to be real, with real tasks, what consultants do. And we did actually 2 different experiments. The first one was more on how can GenAI improve the performance of consultants on tasks that they do on the day-to-day basis. And the second one, and this one has been, let's say, relatively popular so far. I would almost say that it is an academic hit. But we have a second one that is coming, and that will be, let's say, released by the end of July. That is more on, okay, can AI support you in doing things that you were not doing before? Can it expand the breadth of your aptitudes? And so, very briefly, maybe to remind to people what we did in the first one, we did actually 2 different, let's say, tasks. One which was more on creativity. How can you have new ideas and creative ideas on a pair of shoes? The second one being more on, okay, can you do some problem solving? And we found 3, I would say, 3 interesting results. The first one is that basically on the creative task, human plus AI was much better than human. So the level of performance, the grades that was given to the ideas were much better when you were using AI. So human plus AI better than AI, but than human. But what we found on the problem-solving skill at that time was human and AI was not that was not better than human, it was actually worse. There was a kind of over-reliance. And so what it proves is that you have a kind of a frontier, a jagged frontier, we called it. And what we know is that this frontier is, of course, shifting over time. But we need, when you are an organization, to make sure that you fully understand where to use GenAI and where not to use it, what to expect from it. It was the first result. The second result, when we focused on the creativity, was that we found that, first of all, 90%, 90, of the participants were improving with GenAI. The second thing that was important was that it was your ranking without AI, using GenAI, was not predictive of your result with GenAI. So it has massive implications. First of all, it means that you can expand your talent pools because your talent pools. The second thing is that you need in your recruiting process to revisit the way you recruit. You need to make sure that you are experiencing, let's say, maybe interviews without, and this is what we now do at BCG. On one side, we are interviewing people without GenAI, because when you are a consultant and you speak to your client, of course you won't be prompting. But at the same time, it's important to make sure that on some of the tasks, we create an environment that mimic the real moment when you are working. And when you are working at your desk, it is important to understand how you interact with this technology, because the human and AI can be, for some tasks, much better than human only. The third thing that we found,
François, the BCG consultants, were they based in the US or were they like global? They were
so basically it was really global. It was really global, and we wanted to make sure that there was no bias there. So they needed to be, it was a really scientific protocol, so they needed to volunteer. We had to give them something so that they would do their best to perform. So we had all of that.
And are these effects similar across the continents, like European?
Actually, it was relatively similar. One thing that was interesting is to show, because the test, it was in English, that using GenAI is actually a leveler. Yes. Meaning that people not English natives were not disadvantaged the other way around. Mm-hmm. They were much better with GenAI, so it was a leveler on that dimension. Yes, but otherwise, no, we could not identify any difference depending on the regions. And the last thing that we found that was interesting, I believe, is that we found that we use a semantic analysis there, is that the ideas of using GenAI were actually a subset of the human ideas, but really a subset, meaning that you had, let's say, the humans were, I would say, more open to some ideas. It didn't mean that the human ideas were the best, but you had some other good ideas. And we were supposed to have a publication with MIT SMR showing that human ideas were basically you had, thanks to GenAI, you were cutting the tail of the ideas, but that some of the best ideas were made by humans. What we found based on some other work that we did is that over time, it was actually moving, and we decided not to publish that article because the frontier had already shifted.
Okay. Yeah. So when so AI is getting very close to humans, and
yes, and even I would say even better. So human and AI. So, but it's human and AI.
Human AI, yes, yes.
So we didn't test AI only. Okay. And then, so it was the first experiment. And the second experiment, we said, okay, but what happens to if we were asking consultants who are not data scientists to perform data science? And so we developed three cases, three tasks. One was to write code for data cleaning. The other was to apply, let's say, predictive analytics best practices, especially machine learning. And the third was to validate statistical analysis and try to identify and apply some metrics to make sure that the findings were meaningful. And what we found is that on all of them, GenAI acts as an exoskeleton, meaning that you don't know how to do data science, you use GenAI, but when you use GenAI, then you can perform data science, so data science you can walk to a certain level. I will come back to that. And then when you remove GenAI, you haven't learned anything. So it does not prove that you cannot learn over time, meaning that here they were just doing it once. For once, maybe if they do it 10 times, they will work. But the learning is not immediate. So it has implications basically on what you need to do. So, but two other things. The first one is that for the we wanted to make sure that GenAI was not able to perform the tasks on their own. So it was, to a certain extent, we didn't know if it was humans augmenting GenAI or GenAI augmenting humans. But what we found is that on some, let's say, cases, for instance, GenAI was not good at all for the statistical analysis. We found that there, humans, and especially the ones who were good at statistics, given their background, were now over-relying on GenAI. So there is a risk of over-reliance. What we found as well is that for the people that were really not had no background at all, and especially if I take for data cleaning, here it was great. They were doing it, it was better, but basically they were not able to say if they were not able to supervise it at all. So basically they didn't know, they did coding for data cleaning, they cleaned it, but they didn't know if it was cleaned or not. And so, and the last but not least, where both GenAI is good at it and humans are good at it, for instance, for the predictive analytics, the level of quality was actually much better, but you needed to have both. The other thing that was interesting is that there was a split between the level of coders. And to try to evaluate whether the level was good, we did some data scientists perform these tasks. So for us, it was seen as, okay, if the data scientists do it well, this is a level that you can achieve. And what we found there is that if you have some, I would say, coding experience, you're not great, but you're not a novice. Basically, you were reaching the level of data scientist. And I think that this is an important element, because here it doesn't mean that you are doing it as if you were, it's a little bit like Latin. I think it's more a question of mindset than a question of expertise. It is because these people knew how to code. They were better equipped to embark and leverage the power of GenAI. And so I think that what I've just described as many implications for companies. On one hand, on training, what do you need to train? Do you need to make your employees experts, or do you just need to make sure that they create you have the right background in coding and so on to be able to reach out to a level? The second thing is that, of course, it has implications on the talent pool, because this exoskeleton, and especially for capabilities that are difficult to find on the market, data scientist is not very easy for everyone to attract data scientists. But if you can have people with some level of coding that you augment thanks to GenAI, then you will be able to perform some data science internally. So it has a lot of impact on this type of thing. The third thing that is important is as well the question about teaming. How do you structure your teams? For instance, for consultants, it means that maybe you need to have some data scientists like part of the team, because as I said, to avoid the over-reliance that you can have, and that will help these people who are not specialists, who are not data scientists, but to perform data science, but with a primus inter pares that could help them and provide some guidance. And last but not least, for me, there is a question about the strategic workforce planning, because very often when you think in terms of strategic workforce planning, you think in terms of hard skills. How many data engineers do I need to develop? I wonder whether strategic workforce planning won't move from these hardcore skills to soft skills, where you will have people that are able to embrace new technologies and to deal with them and to deal with this ambiguity. So I don't have the answers, but I think that these are questions that we should try to solve over time if we really want to be good and to unleash the power of this technology. Because I think that this is a paradox. We are at the moment, and I see it in different companies, entering the disillusionment period. If you take the let's say the classical let's say hype curve, but I don't think this disillusionment is related to the technology itself. It's more related to the inability that we have as companies at really unleashing the power of these technologies. And this is why I strongly believe, and this is what I'm trying to implement at the 7-2's portfolio companies, which is to say, okay, maybe there is disillusionment, but let's try to be state of the art to unleash the power of these technologies. And if we do that, we'll really create a source of competitive advantage. And I believe that this, how to unleash the power of technologies, will be the source of the main source of the competitive advantage in the next decade to come, in the decade to come.
So where are the low-hanging fruits? Like what is the, for instance, for instance, you have like a company, your portfolio, like what would be the first thing that AI could help without automate?
So I think that what I'm telling my portfolio companies is that you should not consider AI transformation as a technology transformation, exactly for the reason that I have just mentioned. And I think that I often split them when I introduce that to them into three parts. Of course, you have what I call the deploy. You deploy GenAI, that's nice. You have the Microsoft Copilot things and so on. Great. The only issue I have there is that two things. The first one is that it's not just because you give a Microsoft Copilot license to someone that they will adopt it. So you still need to have a change management approach. How do you implement it into their workflows? And the second thing is that with that, you don't have any money in the bank. If you want to have money in the bank, you need to redesign or to reshape I would say some functions. And instead, I hate the word use case. What I'm saying is that you need, and we are old enough, the two of us, to know and to remember this notion of reengineering in the 90s. But I think that what we need to do is to re-engineer functions, but powered by GenAI or AI more globally. And we have good candidates: marketing, customer service, field sales force, and so on. So there are things that can be done, but here we need to rethink the way and reimagine new ways to perform these technologies, to unleash the power of this technology. And it will take time. You know, if you come back to the steam engine or to electricity, basically it took 40 years before you really had, let's say, the plants that were reorganized with lines and so on. So I think that we don't know exactly, but we need to rethink the way to work. We need to rethink the entire processes. This is second one. And then you have the third one, which is more invent, which is more about, okay, what should I do and how should I redefine my products, which new features or which to leverage AI and make a new product market fit. So I think that depending on the companies, for each of them, you need to reshape. And for some of them, you need to rethink the product, your products and services.
What is the kind of size the companies that you supervise? Are they like medium-sized companies, large companies?
So yeah, it's mid-cap companies, but here you can see a lot of impact.
Yes,
as well.
Yeah.
Because
I can imagine that you talk about, you know, like people like that the AI helps like upskilling, you know, like, you know, the different workers, but it could probably do the same for companies, you know, like large companies can have maybe the state of the art, you know, technologies, best practice and so on, but maybe for the mid cap, it's maybe not affordable, or maybe maybe you can afford to have an army of data scientists for working for you, but now suddenly you have access to a pool of, you know, like if you can, you know, if one engineer, one data scientist can work with like 2-3 AIs and like be equivalent to like 2-3 or team of.
No, that's true. But what is important is we need to make these companies understand what they can do.
Yes.
And to do it the right way, there is very often a question in terms of or a challenge in terms of strategy and capabilities for them to really embark into this journey.
Yes.
But we can do things that are interesting, and we've already started with a few of them.
Yes.
And so we're still in the process. As I said, I joined let's say a month and a half ago, but we have a good hope to see results before the end of the year.
So what were the most successful of AI implementation that you have seen in the past couple of years?
No, but I've seen some of these, let's say, so you have different elements. So you have AI and GenAI, which is a bit different. I'm not saying that it's that different, but you have, let's say, AI for decision making and AI for more to generate new content. If I take AI, I've seen and I've participated to several, especially on Salesforce, to help people better on sales, for Salesforce effectiveness, to help companies really leverage this to identify and to prioritize the customers, to really identify and predict which type of offer they could give. And in one of them, and it was the first time and the only time it happened in my career, it was for a consumer goods company, and we told the Salesforce, okay, we're telling the salespeople, okay, you need, these are your customers that are the priorities, and this is so it was they were visiting hotels, cafe, restaurant, and what was interesting is that and we're telling them, okay, this is the type of offer that you should make to them, and this is the only time where unions were asking us to accelerate the deployment of the algo, because basically the ones having that were getting much better results and therefore reaching their bonuses much faster. So I think that one was very good. Another one that was very interesting as well was more for more on the cultural front. We identified that it was a product company that had more than 1 million SKUs, and therefore when you were let's say a salesperson, it was very difficult for you to identify a newbie. It was difficult to understand, okay, what should I propose to upsell or cross-sell? And the veterans were a bit upset by all these questions from their young colleagues. And so we developed an algo, and they were happier to train the algo than to answer to their colleagues. And it was good because for the company, it was fantastic, because when you have that, then it is the entire culture of the company that you can protect. And just to be in, and instead of being, let's say, something transferred from one old salesperson to a new salesperson, basically you had everything in the algo, and so the results were really fantastic. So this is more, I would say, for let's say AI. I don't know if you call it traditional, predictive, or analytical. I prefer personally analytical, but I'm maybe the only one in the world. And so then you had another for GenAI. What I have seen that was really useful was, of course, in coding. It has really transformed the way people code. Andrei Karpathy said it very nicely in saying, okay, I'm not coding anymore, I'm prompting and then supervising. In customer service, we are wrong when we believe that GenAI cannot be empathetic. It is really amazing what you can read, what they can do. So in terms of customer service, fantastic. And of course, in terms of marketing, in terms of content generation, it's you can personalize.
Well, there's studies that AI is more empathetic in medicine, because in fact, doctors, at least in the US, doctors are extremely busy, and they don't spend much time, chatting the patients and so on. It's very so there's not much empathy because they don't have time to deliver to patients. And when they do tests, they find that AI has all the time of the world, right? So patients, in fact, are much more positive with AI than with like human doctors.
Yeah, that's true. But then there is a question about the quality of the diagnostic, and we all know the Watson Health.
Yeah. It's not to give diagnostic, but just to ask how you are doing, or these kind of things. So it's more like even of a nurse or technician, right? Not to be substitute of to the doctor. I wanted to open to the floor. I keep talking to François, but if you have any questions, raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. But to continue on AI, one aspect when you talk about your second study on exoskeleton, so a concern is the resilience of the organization, right? So people rely so much on these exoskeleton, and suddenly they're not available anymore, or things they're not fit for purpose anymore. So what's plan B, right? So if they skill your labor force, with that, it's like a typical example is the GPS in the car. I think now not most people cannot read maps anymore and don't know where to go by themselves, but we rely so much on the GPS. I just enter the destination and we drive at least.
For me, it's the question, because we've been doing that over time. So believe me, do you know how to do a fire? Maybe yes, maybe no. Do you know how to cook? How to cook, or how to kill, let's say, or how to fish without, let's say, I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no. And so I think it has been the evolution of technologies. But for me, what is more important, there are two things that are more important with AI and that might make it a little bit different. The first one is that how are we now building the capabilities of a senior, if you're in the consulting firm, if you're in a law firm, and so on, if you were not a junior. And that I don't have the answer. So I think that, and it is a very important one. Will we need that, or will we need just to have augmented seniors knowing and supported by AI to identify that? So I think that there is this question about the training and how you upskill people over time from junior to senior. I'm not talking about reskilling. I'm talking about upskilling, making them try the process that transformed the junior I was 30 years ago to the senior partner I became, let's say, 15 years ago. The second question I have is that we need to realize that, opposite to many other technologies, AI is impacting your professional identity in terms of your sense of competency, your sense of autonomy. And it might be both sides, because basically, thanks to AI, you might feel more autonomous compared to your manager, but then, and your sense of belonging. We found, for instance, that it was, and at a bank, we made sure that people were having their breaks at the same time, because otherwise they didn't feel enough contact. They were not in contact with enough humans. And we found that by that, you are actually improving the productivity by a lot. So I think that what I mean is that probably these questions, and when I am discussing with my portfolio companies, or when I was discussing with my clients when I was at BCG, I was not talking for an AI transformation to the CTO. I was talking to the CHRO. And I am talking to the CHRO because I believe, as I said, that the difficulty for HR is absolutely critical. What it means for your employees is very important. Then you have a question that is often asked, which is, oh yes, but it's critical to have human in the loop. And you know that it's really a transformation compared to what was said. If you come back to Herbert Simon, or if you come back to usually what we say, that the objective is not to have human in the loop, but to for new technologies is to have automation. And I think that we need to be careful, not to be careful to say, oh, we should make sure that there is no automation, but not to say, oh, yes, but there will always be humans in the loop and so on. Maybe not. Look at Fanuc, for instance, is now having, let's say, light out factories where you have robots building robots with AI, and now they can be unsupervised for 30 days. So what will happen in a few years? I don't know. When I was in China, I look at the Shanghai port that had one terminal that was, let's say, automated and with AI and with just a few engineers supervising it. So you have plenty of things like that. So I think that basically over time, we can see that knowledge work is now under the threat of this automation. And maybe at the company, instead of investing in the use cases that are where you have human in the loop and to augment humans, maybe you should invest in the one that at the end will be automated.
What do you think of the comparison between, because there's automation there, clearly, right? But for me, I think it's kind of helpful to compare it with like trading outsourcing to China or India, right? So you have a factory, so you could have physical factories, or you move them to Mexico or to China. So this has been done for the past 20, 30 years. And there's no human in the loop. Well, when it's in China, it's in China. What you do, and once in a while, an Apple engineer will fly from California to Shenzhen and look at the factory. But most of it is done Foxconn and so on. They do it by by itself. So today we're not outsourcing to China, we're outsourcing to AI, right? In the virtual virtual world.
Yeah, yes.
And, you know,
Just go ahead.
and India is more in terms of less manufacturing, but more like services, the call center and so on. And here again, there's less human in the loop. But you can see downside. For example, in the US, there are a lot of issue with. So here, this is like manufacturing, for instance, of in medicine of generics, in pharmaceutical. There's a huge problem of quality, you know, like so many like no big brands, no, they make the generics in India, and there's hardly no inspection from the FDA, and so there's a huge issue of quality. So this is something that is like probably like that makes people like worse off. So probably medicine and marginally probably cheaper, but it's huge problem of quality. So here there's no human in the loop, you know, FDA. To inspect a factory in India, it has to give like 1 month's notice. I have to say 1 month before, say we're coming to inspect the factory, right? So and so with the system with no human in the loop, no inspection, no regulation, like totally outsourced, has very terrible consequences. You know? So it's what do you think?
Yes, that's terrible. But if you go back to, for instance, to China, that I know better,
yeah.
maybe no human in the loop, but at the end, you have all processes to check the quality. And what happened in China is that honestly, the quality they created, and one of the reasons why it's so difficult for people to have the decoupling is because no one is able to be as good as they are in terms of even technologies and
supply chain and
so on. So I think that, but we have the same question with AI. It's either you go and you don't know what you do and you don't have, it's not human in the loop. It's quality testing in the loop that could be done by AI, by the way. So it's I think it took time before this supply chain emerged. So I think it's the same with AI. What you say is right. You can outsource to AI. But if you do this outsourcing, make sure that you are clear about what you also outsource, how you test the quality, and so you do that in a way that will over time become very very interesting. And so I think that when people say, oh, it will never work, I would never say never. And on one hand, and on the other hand, is that give it a bit of time. This is, you know, if I make an analogy with airplanes, we are in the at the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th century, and we do let's say flight that are maybe 900 yards. We're not even crossing the channel, but let's say it is clearly something that is very big. And I think we're just at the beginning of it.
So what advice would you give to, you know, people at different stage of their career? So let's say someone who's a college graduate, you know, or maybe your kids or your niece or nephew, people who enter the workforce. What should they do? Or people even in college?
Now, when you enter the workforce, what I'm saying is that be agile. Because you are entering a world that is really moving at an exponential speed. And therefore, what will make the difference is not your expertise, but your ability to grasp and live in this moving world, these moving parts. On one hand, and on the second hand, and this is the advice I gave to my children who actually went to university in the mid 2010s was, okay, learn philosophy. You will have to redefine what the human is. So it's good to be able to think and to articulate your thinking. But you know, because I believe that what we see that we are becoming lazy by using these technologies. But you know, it's a little bit like what happened when farmers, the number of farmers diminished, and it was more and more automatized. basically we created gyms to try to train, even if we were not, let's say, in the field in the fields anymore. So what, maybe we'll have to create gyms to train our brain and not to be totally lazy and to have a kind of an obesity of the brain. So
and then for someone who's like mid-career, so sometimes I meet people who have been working, 5-10 years, and so they're seizing also, they're wondering what to do, right? They studied in one particular area, but maybe they see that it's a bit, AI is going to be so disruptive, or they want to catch the AI.
I must admit that for me, this is, and I'm sorry to say that, but I believe they are in a difficult position because they are not senior enough yet to be managers and to be able to really bring new or alternative skills and so on, because it will take time. But for them, it will be, they need to try to be humble enough to realize that a large chunk of what they've learned, their learning curves, maybe were not the right ones. And so they need to embark onto a new learning curve. So I know it's a little bit consulting jargon, but learning curves exist. Bruce Henderson proved it. But I think that we will need to change our learning, to identify our learning curves. And for me, as I said, our learning curves is how do you adapt, how quickly and how deeply you adapt to the use of these new technologies. And it is moving very fast. As you know, Sam Altman used to say recently, I saw him in Boston in April, if I remember well, where we're saying, GPT-3 was for 5-minute tasks, GPT-4 for 50-minute tasks, and GPT-5 will be for 5-hour tasks. And it is planned to be for the end of this year. We'll see. And if it's not the end of this year, it will be early next year. So I think that what is important is our ability to adapt and grasp this. And it is true that it is a massive, it is an industrial revolution. So we need to put ourselves in the, let's say, in the mindset of what happened to people who moved. Let's realize that what happened in the mid-19th century drastically transformed the entire society. And we don't know yet how it will transform it. That's for sure, but it will.
Well, in some science, sci-fi books or novels, humanities end up for making AI illegal. so disruptive or whatever. I mean, it's just a science fiction, but there are like clearly downside, right? So for this for people mid-career who cannot do the switch. I wanted to go back to your very interesting study that you did with that OpenAI under the exoskeleton analogy. Maybe I mean, it could be another study, but here you're not trying to teach people anything, right? So you give them the tool and they try to do the tool as well as they can, and they rely on the machine. But if you could incorporate kind of a learning curriculum or something like that, then maybe they would learn, right?
Absolutely. No, but I agree. I fully agree. What we say, and we don't say that you cannot learn.
Yeah.
What we say is that you need to have an additional,
yes,
let's say, artifact.
Yeah.
If you want to make them learn.
Yes. Yeah.
So that I fully agree with you. And maybe it's a learning, let's say it's some learning program, or maybe it's because if they do it on a regular basis, they will at the end learn, or it's a mix of both. What we found is that depending on their curriculum, even if it is not drastically related to it, it has implications. I give you the example of the fact that you had some, let's say, basics in coding, did not, or moderate level of coding was in itself useless to validate the statistical analysis, the relevance of the statistical analysis. Nevertheless, the ones who had this capability, who had this curriculum, basically performed as well. Their performance was as good as the one of the data scientists. So meaning that this is where I was referring to Latin or whatever. So it means that it is a mindset more than a directly applicable skill.
There was that the famous one, what's the name again? One of the Turing Award winners, predicted a few years ago that you won't have any more like radiologists, or that the radiologists will disappear, but they're still around. Even though the AI is still very good at looking at X-rays and so on, but there's still some use for radiologists. So maybe their job will be different, right? So it's not necessary that AI will just like replace them.
But I think that the question about are we replaced or not, I don't know. I think that some jobs will disappear, some tasks will disappear, but almost all jobs will get redefined.
Yes, yeah.
They will get redefined. So this is why you need to be flexible enough to accept that. And this is why, as I was saying earlier, I strongly believe that you need to have an in strategic workforce planning, the soft skills, this ability, this adaptability will become more important than really hardcore skills. Some of the hardcore skills will still be important, at least for a while. But it's true that we will see massive transitions in terms of technologies.
You mentioned agriculture, like hunting and so on, but I think in France after World War II, or between the war, I think most of the French population was in the countryside, right? Like maybe 60, 70%, and now today it must be 2% or 3%.
Yeah, 3-4%. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a big shift, right? Yeah.
It's a big shift. No, the question is, everyone is asking whether we will still have enough jobs, because what happened previously, all the time you had new jobs and so on. I don't know. Nobody knows. And the people, but there is something I really hate, is all the people that are creating things saying, okay, it will replace X% of jobs or millions, or this is what is our reason. Nobody knows. So instead of doing this, I believe it is more important to help people adapt, learn, and be ready. This is a tsunami. So you'd better see how to deal with the tsunami. And what makes me feel really, I'm a European, and I feel that our politicians, especially in Europe, when I came back from China, I had the feeling that I was coming back to underdeveloping countries, because the level of awareness of what is happening is really, 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 really bad. Politicians basically do not understand or do not experience it. And on top of it, our social model that is very conservative, in the sense that even when you have a company that does not work well, instead of killing it, we basically we bring them to a palliative care. So it prevents innovation and so on. So what will happen? I think that our mindset is not really equipped in Europe to face this revolution, and this is why I'm trying to change that as much as I can. But my sons call me Cassandra, so it shows the impact that I'm actually having.
Our last guest was Oliver Cost, who I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I know Olivier very well.
He was
the cost of failure.
Yeah, the cost of failure is in Europe and the US.
Yeah, and I think he is someone I really appreciate, and I think that his work should be really is at the core of what we should try to make in Europe. Yes, I agree.
So how would you other than reducing the cost of failure, what other policy would be would you recommend to to have
So I
AI?
think that another one is to do something like what was done in Finland, where the government created MOOCs to help people train and understand what AI is about, what it can do, what it cannot do. Because when you're as an individual, you know what it can do, what it can. What we can see that the more you use AI, the better you are. Let's say the more you consider it the more you are confident to use it and happy to use it. And I think it's something very important because when you are as an individual, you know it and understand it, then you are in a better position to push it when you are in a company. And at the end, Michael Porter, the famous strategy professor at Harvard, wrote in the 90s that the competitiveness of a nation depends on the capacity of its industry to innovate and upgrade. So this is why, especially in Europe, where the social model is about keeping the companies, the level of upgrade is really important. And so to put in place the conditions for traditional companies to upgrade, and therefore this is where Olivier Cos's point of cost of failure is so important, because when I meet with companies in Europe, most of them tell me, oh yeah, yes, let's innovate, but we want something new, but is it proven somewhere? So if it's proven, it's not you.
Yes, yeah, I think you have to be able to experiment, right? To try and so on. I think there's a Stanford professor who came up with a book. I think it's called the VC Mindset. I don't know if you heard of it, but a lot of it. I mean, 90% of your investments are going to fail, and one or maybe 1 out of 100 become a unicorn, and so on, right? But if you never try, you'll never find a unicorn. You never try the success. You're not ready to fail like 9 times out of 10 or more. You'll never be able to succeed, and that's a big issue. So this for innovation. In terms of society, so what do you think that what makes AI acceptable to fellow citizens, like other humans, or humans who are not working on AI and so on? So, I mean, we work on AI, we're interested in AI, so we grow we could be becoming comfortable with it, but for people who don't know it, like...
I think there are 3 things, but happy to get challenged. The first one is really on what we call, let's say, usually responsible AI, about fairness and transparency. But very often people who are in AI are focusing, in my opinion, too much on that. It's one element, but it's not the only one. I think that there is another one, which is the risk-benefit ratio. And this risk-benefit ratio can differ by region based on the culture or based on the Maslow pyramid. I worked a bit with in Western China on let's say AI diagnostic. There you don't have good GPs, so they are ready to give and to provide their data, because it's a question of life and death. You might have a diagnostic better than probably the one they would get from the GPs. If you say that in Europe, where you have all GPs and so on, then it doesn't work. So we need to realize that this risk-benefit ratio can differ by location, by topic, and by culture, but it's something important to make it acceptable. And the last thing is about the accountability. Who is accountable for it? And one of the issues we face, I believe, for instance, we're referring to autonomous vehicles, is the fact that it is not clear, and the fact that people don't believe that car manufacturers are well equipped to create this. Would you trust, let's say, I won't give a name, brand name, but any of the these companies that were doing more, let's say, engine, that they know how to do softwares and not to be hacked and so on. I'm not sure. So who is accountable? So I believe that instead of just focusing on what we call responsible AI, there is a point to see more about how to think about a kind of a social license. And I would believe that this is probably what we need to develop more, a social license to use AI.
I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, AT&T announced that all their customers got hacked. You know, that hundreds of millions of accounts got hacked with all your, I think from, if you're a customer of AT&T between 2021 and 22, so all your call logs were hacked, you know, so the number that you called, the duration and so on, for, you know, 100 or 200 million Americans. This is huge, you know, and I don't think AT&T, I don't know how accountable they are, but I think people don't realize the amount of harm that it can cause, you know, in terms of privacy or, you know, blackmails and so on. This is so, and then I think yesterday there was some journalists found that the Google Gemini was able to read his Google Drive or his private documents, right? So you have all these things that is also a lot of things that for accountability that definitely, you know.
But it's true that basically it's cybersecurity becomes the most important question, but it's a critical question.
Okay, I don't see any questions. Do you have any questions for François? You had the opportunity to ask him. You can raise your hand and we'll give you the microphone. I don't know if Caroline wants to ask. I think Caroline is one of the co-hosts. She used to work for one of the consulting firms too. You work on maybe my last question is you work a lot in telecom media, you know, in that industry. But which industry you see will be the mostly impacted? You think by AI?
Honestly, all industries would be
all
impacted.
industries.
All industries. All industries. So then the more, I don't know, maybe, but all industries will be significantly impacted. I cannot see one that won't be.
Okay.
Claude.
Claude, yeah, Claude. Hold on, I have to. Okay, you can unmute yourself, Claude.
Yes, I was trying to unmute myself,
Yeah.
but for a second I couldn't. Very interesting, François. It means thank you. What do you think, François, of the EU AI Act risk tier model? I mean, is it useful? Is it going to actually guide people to know what's risky, what's not risky, what's socially safe and not? What's your point on that?
So my point is that will it guide? Probably because of the risk of retaliation. Is it useful? Probably not. In my opinion, you know, the problem we have in Europe is that, and what we have with AI is not that easy to know when you do something, if it's good or bad. And I'm not saying that it is reassuring, but it's in the way you will use it. And so having bureaucrats deciding in their ivory tower what is good, what is bad is, I'm not sure. So I find that, to be frank, the way it is regulated in China, where it's more, they work closely to them, and when they see something, they regulate very quickly, is, in my opinion, a better way, because you don't know upfront if it's good or bad. So which means that I believe that with the EU Act, you over-regulate some areas and under-regulate others. But I'm not able to say which ones. So this is when you fade them that you see it. So I would move more for a kind of an agile regulation instead of trying to say upfront what is good, what is bad. It's very difficult. At least I'm not able to. Caroline.
Hi, bonjour François. So I had a question. You spoke about the uncertainties of, you know, the careers of the future. So what would you recommend to someone who starts college and is really passionate about art or about, you know, UI, UX design, which probably will be replaced? Like, would you encourage them to move forward with their passion and see, on the way how they can become agile and, kind of make up for GenAI, or like, what would you recommend?
So I think that if you're passionate in art, so I will give you the example of my wife. My wife is an artist and she is an executive fellow at Harvard, exactly on that. She works on memory, and her perspective is more to use AI either to brainstorm or to, not AI, I would say GenAI in that case, but to provide some ideas. And as a counterpart, I met with some people in the design industry that instead of prompting to have a definite answer, is more having something that is always moving to trigger ideas. So I think that for art, and this is where we need to think both sides, augmented humans and augmented AI by humans, augmented humans by GenAI, and augmented GenAI by humans. So I think that through these interactions, we can still do new things in some areas. So I don't think that it's done. We will still have artists.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so this is 2 o'clock. Thank you very much, François. It was wonderful. So we'll read your research that will be published soon. You told us, and yeah, OpenAI said they will have the new version like Strawberry or something like that. So maybe this will be the next.
Yeah, but I think that one is not a real breakthrough.
Not yet.
It's not yet the. As far as I understand.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. You can find François on LinkedIn and all his publication. Next session will be end of August, and we'll have a presentation about weather forecasting with AI from a researcher from INRIA, as an IT institute in France. Okay, thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.